So we're trying something a little different today. No script, no extended talking points, no big slideshow. Just me talking for a while over some background audio that I've collected. In this case, we're going to be talking about capsule hotels. Why? Because, well, when I see this online, I see a lot of, I would describe it as clickbait vlogs about, oh wow, we stayed in this post-apocalyptic capsule hotel, and look at this cyberpunk place, and isn't this weird? And I really wanted to give it a more even-handed discussion, because, frankly, they're great. They're really practical. I've stayed in them many times in my trips to Japan, and I wanted to get a less clickbait discussion of them and just sort of lay it out here. There'll be a bit of a slideshow, I'm sure, but not major presentation, no background music, no cool fancy videos. Just a little talk. Just me rambling for a few minutes. Anyway, there's a few reasons why you've probably been interested in staying at Capsule Hotel. One is you've heard about them from these travel vlogs and you're like, oh wow, that seems so weird and so strange. Or, you're trying to make that content, in which case really it's been done to death, please stop. Or finally, you're looking for a practical travel solution. And they really are super practical if you kind of understand how they work and you pick the ones that are good for travel. There are capsule hotels for different purposes, and some offer much more than others, and we'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Or not even good or bad, just which ones offer what and how that might affect your travel decisions. I think the big one is everybody sees the cool image of that one place. Has multiple locations. It's called 9 Hours, if I recall correctly. I've stayed there, and as an example, yeah, you can stay there, but it really is not a representative experience of what most capsule hotels are like. It's kind of halfway there, but it's not exactly the most. I wouldn't even call it. I stayed there 1 or 2 nights, and I guess the best way to describe it is it's okay, but it's really not the full experience, and you're missing out, especially with some of the extra amenities that other places offer. But we'll talk about that. So, the less clickbaity version of this would be I stayed at a slightly upscale hostel, really is what a capsule hotel works out to. And by upscale, I mean it offers you a place to sleep, and then it offers you various common areas like bathrooms or common kitchen areas or food areas, and really, it's just meant to be a much more convenient experience if you sort of know how to work them. Now, historically, they've had a main use. So their main use was businessmen or salarymen, as you want to use the Japanese term. If they were out late drinking or working late and they couldn't take the last train home, they would hop into a capsule hotel and sleep the night and go to work. And a lot of that design, sort of the thing to remind yourself about, is the original traditional quote-unquote capsule hotels are meant to be places where you can literally walk in with the clothes off your back and show up to work the next morning. And that was kind of one of the appeal of it. You didn't have to worry about having toiletries. They gave you sleeping clothes. And actually, one way you can tell for the more businessman associated ones is if they've even got a little nook where they're selling like dress shirts. I've seen that a couple of them. That's a good sign it's meant for salarymen. Or it was originally meant for salarymen. And it means that you get there, and not only do they give you a toothbrush, toothpaste, a whole range of hairstyling products. They've got bathing facilities, obviously. They've got shaving facilities. They've got, toothbrushes, toothpaste, your own sleeping clothes. They've got laundry. Some have, dry cleaning into it, so you can give them your suit and say, okay, I want this in the morning. And the whole thing is meant to be I need to be here in the morning with what I currently have. And for travelers, if you think about it, that's really useful because, you don't have to worry about unpacking stuff. You don't have to worry about carrying all this stuff. So what I would use that for instance, is I would travel to Japan with large suitcases and have multiple change of clothes and, have the toiletries and all that other stuff just in case I needed it. But then what would happen is I would be going off on like a train trip, a day trip out to some small place, or out to Osaka, or out to Sapporo. And what I would do is I'd just bring a backpack full of stuff. I'd bring like a change of clothes or two. I'd bring any essentials, toiletries that only I had. Like either it was hair products that I expect them not to have, and everything else I just expected to be there when I arrived. And it meant you could travel super light when you got there, and you just left your luggage in a locker, because Japan loves having long-term stay lockers where you can dump your bag in and pick it up like 5 days later without a problem. Always check when you put things in a locker how long, but in Japan, most of them let you store it there for days. So this whole idea as bring only the clothes on your back, and in my case I brought like a couple of rolled up, t-shirt, underwear, socks combos, that was enough to basically handle anything. So it's a really, really all-in-one staying solution, and frankly it's cheap. It's cheaper than a hotel, right? So hotels, depending where you stay in Japan, can go for hundreds of dollars a night. Most capsule hotels go from $30 to $60 a night for one person. So that is more of the traditional capsule hotel talking about, the whole businessman staying overnight. And they're kind of formal, not formal, but they're kind of like, they expect you to sort of know how it works. And you're going to be surrounded by very annoyed Japanese businessmen if you are not following the rules of the place. So, you got to sort of, and usually when you show up, if you're obviously traveling, they'll hand you a piece of paper that sort of shows you how everything works. But the whole idea there is you are traveling light and you're keeping your stuff. Everything you have should be able to fit in the locker. Now, most of these places have secondary luggage storage, so if you show up with a big rolling suitcase, they'll put it in the back somewhere, or they'll put it in a luggage room. The main trick when you're staying there, however, is you're not going to want to have to dig through that luggage over and over again. So you've got to learn how to organize your stuff to put inside a small locker. That's where your important stuff goes, and the only stuff that goes into your capsule are the things that you want to, A, really take care of in some cases, or B, recharge overnight with you. So we'll talk about what's in a capsule usually. But that's the more traditional capsule hotels. And the thing is that's sort of one of the draws of it is they have amazing amenities. They have a wonderful sento or bath. You got to be used to the whole Japanese bath experience. That's another talk. But some of them have free food. Some of them have free drinks. That's even better. They generally have really nice common areas. And the whole idea is that you're just going into your capsule to sleep. Right? And when you're traveling, that's not always a bad idea. Where, as a good example is, you're there in a tourist area. You're not planning to hang out inside your hotel room. Now, there are places in Japan where the hotel is a destination, for instance. Like if you go to Hakone, the whole traditional Hakone experience is you sort of wander around for the day, you check into your ryokan for dinner, and then you basically spend the evening in your ryokan, the traditional hotel. And the hotel is meant to be a place you stay and enjoy. So they usually have, bath facilities, but they also have a nice spacious room with a nice view. And the whole point is you're relaxing in this room, traditional sort of Japanese room. And that's great if the hotel's the destination. But when you just want to be a tourist, capsule hotels are great. For me, when I travel, usually what happens is I start in capsule hotels. I travel light. I'm in capsule hotels and hostels. I put my luggage in either the luggage storage of the hostel or hotel, or I put it in a locker and I go on a day trip somewhere, because you don't want to haul big luggage on the bullet train. You really don't want to. And towards the end of the trip, I kind of try to settle in, because that usually means I've either bought stuff or I've started to fill my bags up. And then by the end of it, I want to take it easy. So I end the last couple of days in an actual traditional hotel where I've got a bed, I've got a desk, I've got a chair, and I'm not really always constantly rushing out the door to get somewhere. Plus, I'm not jet lagged by then, because at a capsule hotel, the first couple of days in a trip, you're probably not sleeping much because you're jet lagged as hell. So really, just sort of toss and turn around I'd rather toss and turn in a cheap place than an expensive place. And also, it kind of forces you out the door, which is not a bad thing when you're on the first couple of days. So, that is the traditional capsule hotel. Yeah, you'll also see the ones like 9 Hours, or you'll see there's this space one that I went to one night. And they tend to have amenities closer to a traditional hostel. They're really just a hostel with theming. They've got a shower and they've got soaps. And I think 9 Hours did have the whole sleeping clothes. But they've got just showers with soaps, and I think the toothpaste and toothbrushes, that stuff, maybe you could ask for them, or there was a vending machine, but they didn't supply everything. They kind of expected you to treat it like a hostel. And that's not a bad thing. It's just sort of an understanding of what you're getting when you walk in the door. And you have to travel with a little bit more of your own stuff, and it's a little more quote-unquote roughing it compared to the more OG capsule hotels. Are there drawbacks to them? Well, first of all, we'll talk about the cool theming ones. The cool theming ones, in my opinion, tend to be not as good because they're catering to tourists. And I went to 9 Hours, and I was surrounded by other travelers as well, which, oh my God, these tourists. Well, yeah, I'm a tourist too. Let's deal with it. But it means you're not getting people who sort of get the capsule hotel experience. I remember some of them were trying to haul their luggage into the capsule with them, or they were walking around in shoes, and you're supposed to be barefoot because those floors make a lot of noise. Whereas the traditional ones where you're surrounded by Japanese businessmen, they get it. You're there, the common areas are eerie quiet most of the time, and you've got the traditional bath, and you're enjoying it, and you just sort of meld into the scenery there because you're the weird tourist amongst all the locals. No one bothers you either. It's fine. But for example, like the J-Ship Osaka that I stayed in, or is it Anshin Oyado? My pronunciation may be off on that one. I stayed in that one a couple of times. That was great. And there was one in Sapporo I stayed in. It was very much more that. So things like I did the space one, which was bad for multiple reasons we'll explain later. And then there's the 9 Hours. 9 Hours is okay. It's just not really the full capsule experience, and it's cool for a couple of photos of you in the post-apocalyptic future, but not so much otherwise. The space one was just bad because it was kind of new, so everything smelled like degassing plastic. But also, I was lucky because I stayed there when it wasn't crowded. There was only a few people there. It was one of those places that looked like it was set up in preparation for the Olympics. And the number of bathrooms they had and showers they had would have never supported if that place was full. It would have been a nightmare trying to get your shower and your bath and use the bathrooms there. So I would not recommend unless you're going when it's dead. And even then, it's for a photo op. In the middle were other places, like the good examples I stayed at Osaka Boken Bed. That was a very kind of cool, I would say it's almost an Instagram location because there was a lot of people there who were clearly doing their Instagramming. And it's got a cool setting. It's sort of surrounded by books. There's a cafe there. You get avocado toast there in the morning. It's, very millennial, I guess. And it didn't have a lot of facilities, but it was also A, really cheap, and B, you didn't expect it. It was more of a hostel that was themed and it was like more of a cool hostel themed experience. I didn't mind that one because it just had showers and, expected you to bring your own stuff. And it was kind of a nice vibe. So, you sat there all day, and during the daytime, just lo-fi hip-hop was playing through the entire place all day. That's always a weird experience, lying in your capsule and seeing that. That's an example of one that was sort of low amenities, but I enjoyed the vibe. But the space one, no. 9 Hours, again, you stay there once for the Instagram, but you gotta stay at one of the traditional ones to really get what a capsule hotel concept is. So yeah, that's the general overall vibe and experience. A couple of things to be aware of. Again, I said you had to organize your stuff. The first time I went there, I was constantly having to go back into my big luggage that I put in storage because I forgot something. Some of the places have no real luggage storage. It's literally just put it over there in the corner of the lobby and hope no one takes it, so you want to make sure you have nothing valuable in there. They always give you a locker, but the locker may vary in size, so something to keep in mind if they have dedicated luggage storage or not. Again, traditional places had them, or you find a locker nearby. There's always lockers somewhere in a city in Japan. Or there's often at the train station has like luggage storage. be aware of your luggage requirements. You can only take a small locker's worth as your usual storage, and then everything else goes into the capsule with you. And inside there, you're expected to not make noise. So they have a television with headphones. They have a flashing light based alarm, like a silent alarm to try to wake you up. They're not supposed to use your own alarm, although I think people tend to do that. And yeah, so you're traveling light when you're in there. Usually I just bring all my batteries that I need to recharge or my electronics, anything super valuable that I can bring with me. And the capsules aren't locked. I should point that out as well. So, keep your value. If you have valuable big stuff, you keep it in your locker. Japan is, generally speaking, not a place where stuff gets stolen, but you never know. You don't want to flash, a $10,000 camera and just drop it into your capsule and walk away, right? So be aware of that. The lockers are always readily accessible. Just put your stuff in your locker, and those are generally safe. Anyway, yeah, so luggage and stuff control is definitely important, and again, towards the end of my trip, I switched to a regular hotel. In terms of other things, obviously, if you're claustrophobic, the big question is, how big are they? And I am, 5'9". I'm not huge, but I can sit up in one of them and, put my hand up in the air, and in most of them, you're not sleeping in a coffin. Now, if you're claustrophobic, that won't matter, because you're still surrounded on all four sides. But they are big enough, you are not going to sit up and bump your head in these things, unless you are really tall. And most of them, they post on their website the size of them. So they post the width and height of them. Obviously, if you're a really big or really tall person, that might be a problem. But they are pretty deep, and I haven't had any problems with that, but also I'm not claustrophobic. If you have mobility concerns, there are also issues there as well. Now, there are some that are more capsule themed. A good example is the first cabin one that I stayed in Tokyo, where it's really a bed. It's not really a capsule, it's a bed. So you're not sleeping in bunks, you're sleeping on a bed surrounded by other people with common areas. I'll post up a picture, obviously, in the chat, in the video here. Those are most suitable, much more suitable, relatively speaking, for people who have claustrophobia issues, or if you're not sure you're comfortable with crawling in and out of these little nooks. The other thing is these capsules don't lock for fire reasons. They all say that. Fire regulations permit, locking things, so they just have a privacy screen. That may or may not be a concern to you, but again, it's a pretty safe place. All the capsules I've been to have been gender segregated. For women, is that the traditional style capsules, actually that's not quite true, sorry. The bed and book was not gender segregated, but again, it was like 20 spots. The one thing is that a lot of the traditional capsule experiences, they don't have them for women always. Some do, some don't. They've gotten better. They used to be hotels were basically a men's thing only, but they've started to add women's capsule hotels or women's floors on capsule hotels. Some of them aren't built with the same level of amenities because, again, they've just traditionally been only built with one sento, one bath, which means that the other one just gets traditional showers. Not as cool. So just check your facilities. Usually they give a map of the facilities, look them up and see. But yeah, so that is part of the, because I do it because, frankly, I want to sleep somewhere and then get some nice amenities because I've been walking for 10 to 20 kilometers a day. Seriously, I mapped it out. I was walking 10 to 20 kilometers almost every day on my trip. And I needed to soak somewhere after that was done. So either, if the place I was staying at didn't have a sento or onsen, I went to some place that did nearby because I desperately needed it. So yeah, that's one of the things to remember about it. I go for the amenities, so the cool science fiction theme, do it for the Instagram photos, and then go stay somewhere real afterwards. But again, I do it towards the beginning of my trip when I have energy, when I'm getting up. Towards the end, I tend to say, you know what, I'm going to stay in a hotel room. And it means I can save my money and splurge a little bit at the end. So yeah, that's just the general experience. Oh yeah, inside the capsule, you've got a charger, you've got a fan usually, they give you earplugs, you've got lights obviously, there's a television with some headphones. They expect that you don't do anything that makes noise, so, you can work on your phone with headphones, but they kind of frown upon you sitting there clacking away on a laptop. They, not that they really have a problem if you're quiet, but that's what the common areas are for. And the common areas are work areas and, sort of study areas or eating areas. A good example of that is they, for instance, no food or drink in the capsules. Another thing. Again, they have eating areas. And this goes to one of the drawbacks, sort of one of the final sort of notes here. The last time I went to Japan for this was in 2019. And people's feelings towards crowded common areas or just common areas with other people or sleeping areas with other people has changed since 2020 for reasons that, are pretty self-evident. And that may change the vibe there. I don't know. I have not been since then. But yeah, highly recommended. It's just sort of a thing where I see a lot of clickbait of, oh, I stayed in a capsule hotel and oh my God, it's like the post-apocalyptic future. I was like, no, dude, it's just a place to sleep. Right? And when I'm traveling, I like to go places and do things. I'm an active traveler. I work on my cardio before I go traveling because I need to. So if you are the spend all day in your room type, Japan has plenty of places to go to as well. Maybe we'll talk about those later with some different ambient audio. But yeah, there are plenty of places for that too. It just costs you more money. But if you're staying in the cities, especially, these are definitely cost effective, especially in smaller groups. One of the final things there is if you have a group of like 4 people, don't travel in Japan in large groups, by the way. Just really don't. It's not worth it. It just causes more headaches. 4 people, you can get a room for 4, or 2 people, you can get a room for 2. Odd numbers of people, like 1 person, like I traveled solo for some of my trip, and that's just hard, right? It's it's expensive. The hotels still cost you $250 or maybe not $250, that was the one in the city, but they start at $150 a night, even, for 1-person rooms, because ultimately a room is a room. And that's in the big city. It's cheaper, obviously, the further away you get from the big cities. But yeah, so when you're traveling solo or you're traveling in 2 people maybe, they actually make 2-people capsules in some places. I can only imagine that might get awkward for everyone else, but I don't know. You're not supposed to do that in the capsules, by the way. And yeah, so it's kind of a thing where if you're traveling in small numbers of people, Japan is really one of those best places to travel in small groups. 1 to 3 people, great. 1 to 4 people, maybe. After that, it gets to be a pain. Just trust me on that. So yeah, so that's the main thing about capsules. And I just wanted to informally ramble about it, use this background audio, and yeah, just tell you a bit about it in an informal, non-clickbaity fashion, because people are like, oh, I stayed in these Japanese, these capsule hotels are weird. And it's like, you're just basically saying this upscale hostel is weird. It's not. It's just an upscale hostel, really, when you get down to it. And I think people miss out on it because they think it's some weird coffin you're sleeping in, or there are all these post-apocalyptic concrete nightmares, and they're really comfortable. Like, again, their whole point is your bed is comfortable because you're there to sleep and nothing else. And I really enjoyed them. They can get a bit stuffy, and if it's warm months, despite the air conditioning, they'll get stuffy. They have fans. The better the one you stay at, the better the ventilation is. And then you just have to worry about somebody snoring, and they do give you earplugs for that too. We really only had to deal with that once at one of the places. It was like First Cabin, which was a sort of airline-themed one. It was expensive too, relative to most capsules, but someone on that floor was snoring, and some other guy was angry and was occasionally yelled at the guy to stop snoring. So I did hear that. But otherwise, they've been really great experiences. Anyway, that's all. I think I've rambled for long enough. Hopefully you've enjoyed my ramblings, and we'll, come back soon sometime, and I'll talk about either the more resort stays, like ryokan, and staying at the shukubo, I think is the term for it, when staying in a temple. That one's kind of cool. Anyway, talk to you later.